Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of Mikey on Mute. As always, I'm Mikey, coming off mute to tell you my story with mental health, break the stigma of reaching out for help, and try to break down that toxic masculinity. Today I'm so excited to have episode 9 come at you here, and in order to move forward with my story about my mental health journey, I have to tell you about meeting the person that has been the biggest supporter about me getting help, about me being more vulnerable, and breaking that stigma. So I would love to introduce everybody here to the person that balances me out. Ladies and gentlemen, for episode 9, I am bringing you my wife, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, say hi. Sarah, say hi to the good people of the podcast.
Hi.
I wanted to bring Sarah on to give some insight and perspective as we move on to the part of the story. As of last episode, I told you guys about the unique way that brought me into meeting Sarah, and so now I wanted to expand on that. And what better way to do that than with her here to give you the right answers and to also show you all that I'm not the funny one in the relationship. So
That's true.
I don't know if you want to give a short intro about yourself or anything you want them to know, or we can kind of go forward with the episode. I'm leaving that up to you. I guess anything that brings about that you want the podcast audience to know, or about how we balance each other out, anything like that.
Well, I'm Sarah, Gemini. I don't know.
Just that, was that the dating show or whatever?
Yeah, probably. I feel like I am the calm to Mikey's storm. We'll say that.
I'd say that's a good way to describe that. I feel like I am kind of that heightened anxiety of go, 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 and you very much have that attitude of if it's not going to matter in 5 months or 5 years, don't give it 5 minutes of your time. Mm-hmm. Hard for me to understand that a lot with my mental health, but it's really nice to have that balance for sure.
Yeah.
And so I know that we met in an unorthodox way, especially with the groups and everything that we met and all that. So I guess I'd like to understand a little bit more as far as what your mindset was being in the groups, what you were looking for as we kind of came upon each other.
I don't think I was really looking for anything. I had been single for a really long time. I am not someone that will lower my standards just to be with someone. If I'm going to be with someone, it has to be someone that is going to match my energy and bring positivity to it. I don't need someone just to have someone. That has never been my thing. So when I was in the groups, I kind of was just open to just meeting people. I guess I could have told this while I was introducing myself. I have agoraphobia. So I have a very unique, specialized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, versus like Mikey has more generalized anxiety. So basically I think they just were there for me to be able to meet new people, kind of branch out, start talking to, make more friends, and maybe go to events just to like get out of my comfort zone. And so actually the weekend before I reached out to Mikey, I had gone to my first event. It was a hotel event. And it wasn't really like, it was fun, but like it definitely wasn't, I feel like everyone hyped it up more than I thought it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the Sunday night after when I was at home, I really like, and I hate like saying this, and like, cause I don't want it to sound negative, but like, Mikey, before meeting me, would have never been someone that I would have considered like my type. I'm not, I still don't know to this day. Obviously, it's been kind of like a divine intervention thing as to why I even commented on his post.
Yeah.
Because I saw it and I just commented, and yeah, as they say, the rest is history.
It is a mystery to me still to this day as far as when we go over types and what you're looking for and all that stuff. Obviously, I'm very thankful that I brought that, whatever it was, to get, but I think it's really interesting as far as the events and everything like that, helping give you some exposure with your agoraphobia and getting you, I don't know, kind of like an outlet to connect with people in a way that isn't normal, because, you know, the bar scene isn't our scene.
No.
And things like that would be, which are like normal, these normal meet cute stories and everything with people are not really situations that we would be. So it kind of works in our favor, but it wound up being a kind of like a post where we were playing a game where if you are, you know, interested, post this color heart if you want to hook up, you know, post this color heart if you think we would just be friends, post this. And so just one of those little Facebook games that you post to get some interaction and stuff like that.
And I posted a white heart.
Yes.
Which meant I'm intrigued.
I'm intrigued. So first impression, so I know you had just kind of led up with not usually your type. Were there certain things about my post or my pictures that did give you that intrigued feeling, or how did that come about?
I think because your picture that you had posted had some BDSM items in it, and that really was never something that was like really on my mind like that, but for some reason, like, it was his face and the items, and I was like, like, why not? Like, after, yeah, well, and after, like, the weekend when I was, like, trying to, like, go outside of my comfort zone and stuff like that, and it didn't, I still kind of went for the same kind of people, and it wasn't the greatest weekend for me, so I say too much, oh my gosh.
I do too, and it's my podcast, so it's just a normal human speaking thing, so
I think after that I was like, okay, I see what these are about, I really enjoy, like, on paper it sounds amazing, I just feel like maybe I just need to meet different people.
Yeah.
And so when I think just scrolling, I was like, okay, this is totally different. There's nothing, like, I was single, there was nothing holding me back.
Right.
Like, it was just an innocent Facebook post that, like, it wasn't like I commented and now, like, we had to go out or, like, talk or anything like that.
No, it was very much an online thing as far as flirtation, everything like that. And I remember seeing the intrigued heart, and I think I had some clever response, like, intrigued, question mark, because that's how I flirt,
it was
apparently.
Intrigued, huh?
Intrigued, huh? That's what it was. But I remember the comments because I had that very stereotypical feeling of, this person is extremely out of my league. Why are they commenting on something that I posted? And you know that I've battled with plenty of comparison issues and stuff still to this day. So it was definitely an ego booster and a confidence booster in that moment, because in my eyes, here was somebody that, because I had seen your posts, I had seen your pictures and everything, you know, and so it felt really honoring to get that intrigued mention. So I think I don't know, did I slid in first to the DMs?
You wrote intrigued, huh? And then I said, my DM is open.
That's right. So then I was able to message Sarah, and we were able to kind of talk. And what I instinctively remember is there was some ridiculous nickname you had put as my name on there. about a Captain Mushroom something.
Mushroom Cape Cock Chuck.
That's what it was, because everyone had to have a unique name. So, but I do remember our banter it flowed very easily. There was no pressure about meeting or anything like that right away. No. We just talked.
Because we lived an hour and a half-ish away from each other. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we just were getting along over messages, and
it felt really nice to be able to just have kind of these conversations, because I have in the past struggled with being open about anything. So I think being able to talk to somebody and be like, hey, these are where I'm at, I'm not trying to hide anything. This is kind of where we're at, and hey, if we wind up meeting sometime, that'd be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And so I think that led us to kind of a natural moment of, I talk a lot about, impulsive things and stuff, like with mental health and all that stuff, which is crazy to me to have any kind of impulsive, because me, I'm not an impulsive person typically, in the typical sense. Like, I'm not going to be spontaneous, I should say.
Yeah, spontaneous is better than impulsive. Yeah, because you're definitely impulsive.
Yeah, impulsive is something I am. Spontaneous is something I'm working on being and being more open to. Mm-hmm. So, because when we talk about being spontaneous or being impulsive is more what we're talking about at this point. Mm-hmm. We get to the point where you are staying in a hotel with one of your friends for something completely different and innocent. It wasn't even... Yep. Like, it wasn't one of these parties or anything like that.
Nope. I just happened to find myself at a hotel with a pool, which is my prerequisite when I'm getting a hotel.
It's got to have a pool.
And I kind of knew where he lived.
Sorry, we are traveling, and so I was just, there were some noises that when you're not at home, you're not used to your noises, so I like to make sure. But I think it was about a 45-minute distance, roughly, from where you were staying versus where I am.
Yep.
But it was more so that we were talking, and I understand. And so, sorry guys on the podcast, like I said, some side conversation that's probably going to get edited out at some point. But we were about 45 minutes different, and you were staying there, and it was kind of just like a throwaway, like, haha, that'd be really funny if we met or whatever, because I don't think either one of us expected that to be the time that we would meet.
Yes, and it was only 6 days after we started talking.
Correct. So very quickly, it was oh, hey, you're a lot closer than you normally are. Mm-hmm. And what brought us back to that impulsiveness was, hey, I could just drive to you right now and meet you because you're about half the time distance as you normally would be. So, it was very much we had no plans of meeting at that point or anything. We had been just talking, and it was pretty innocent, a little bit of flirtatious, like dirtiness, but like for the most part, just talking to get to know each other. But so I drive 45 minutes to meet Sarah after we agreed, like, hey, is that cool? Like, after it went from haha, I would do it to, hey, I will do it if that's cool with you. So pull up to this hotel, and it definitely screams a bit shady. I mean, not that there was anything super wrong with it, but it definitely was one of the hotels that you would find on the cheaper side, I think, and for good reason. But
I think it also was the area too.
Yeah, it was just kind of a sketchy area, not a whole lot available, but we call it the murder hotel is kind of how we described it. It looked like a place that a murder would happen, nothing with the hotel itself, more so just with the area that it was in. But it was definitely interesting driving out on a whim to meet somebody that I had been talking to for 6 days online.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we had gone into that interaction with a, hey, if we do meet up, this is a 100% physical thing. Kind of not really looking for much more than that. There's a physical attraction here for me. Is there for you? Yes. Okay, cool. So we meet up, and as you usually do with a physical interaction, you take that physical action. That's the most romantic way I can put that. I know you're going to laugh at me. But I like to say a lot that I left that hotel knowing that there might be more to this, and I like to say that Sarah felt the same way. I don't know how you felt exactly at that moment, but...
Yeah, I mean, I remember driving home the next day and, like, doing a rundown with the friend that I was with, and I was like, oh, like, this is perfect, like, he was just so amazing, and, but the distance obviously sucks, and I remember you and I talking that night while we were sitting there, and you said, I'm possibly potentially open to having more kids, but I never want to get married again.
Mm-hmm.
Or wait, no.
Yeah.
No, you said I don't want more kids. I am open to possibly getting married again.
Is that what I said?
I mixed it up.
Okay.
Yes. And at that time in my head, I had never really wanted to get married. That never was anything that was like in my realm of thoughts, but I did want to have kids. So I remember feeling kind of bummed about that, and I was like, but it was just like a first meeting, like I'm not going to worry about that, obviously. But yeah, I remember that being like the only downfall was like, he would get married again and doesn't want kids. And
so, yeah,
and I was the exact opposite, because I wanted kids and didn't really care to ever get married. So I remember that being like the only thing, but other than that, I remember feeling like pretty good and wanting to continue talking to him and getting to know him more, for sure.
That's good. I appreciate that. Seemed to work out. So, it moved at some point to, hey, I'd be willing to come down and drive to see you and hang out on the weekends I don't have the boys. I work in a remote fashion, so I can bring my work with me. Worked out that you worked at home too, so that way we could kind of hang out in, lunch breaks and after work and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly the moment. I know that you put it in my court as far as asking anything for going out.
Mm-hmm.
And everything like that, so that you gave it to me at my pace.
Yep. It was about a month after we met that you had asked me. And I remember in that month, he had come down to where I lived like 2 or 3 times, because he also could come during the week when he didn't have kids, and not just on weekends.
Right.
So I remember you coming down like once a week for that whole like month, and we would talk on the phone, which I hated talking on the phone. And
I don't make phone calls at all. So
yeah, we would message like all the time, day and night, like just nonstop. And when we were together, it was like amazing. I still was struggling with like some agoraphobia stuff of my own, so I wasn't always 100% comfortable, but that had nothing to do with him. That was a me thing. And I remember that he always was like, what can I do? What can I do to help? Like, what do you need? Like, do you need me to leave? And I would always be like, no, I don't want you to leave. Like, and I would be like, no, like, that's not what I need at all.
Right.
But yeah, I remember having the feelings of like wanting to say I love you, like probably like 2 to 3 weeks into even knowing him. And I would like message my friends and be like, I swear I'm just gonna like slip, it's gonna slip one day, then I'm just gonna say it. And I was like, but I'm not gonna be the first one to say it. Like, I can't do it.
And you were very vocal about me being the first one that you wouldn't do it, so I do remember asking you to go out with me and telling you that I love you, and just
within a day of each other.
Yeah, very quickly. The feelings were very strong, and I think there was a bit of hesitation. At that point, I had been working on myself in a way of like, hey, don't jump into situations like you had in the past, because I've gone through times where I've jumped in the deep end, and this felt different. Like, I wanted to do all the things as far as dating and say I love you, and I just had to make sure I was doing it on a right schedule. Not that there was a timeline for it, but that we weren't rushing and we let it naturally happen, because we weren't looking for a relationship, and it really blossomed quickly.
No, because you had a girlfriend when we met.
Correct. And I was very open and honest about, hey, this is who I am. I'm polyamorous. This is what it looks like, you know, and
I had already known about all of that, because obviously I was in the groups, but it had been something that had been part of my life for probably like 4 or 5 years before I even met him. So,
and so we had very open communication, but this definitely was something that we both wanted to have happen in a way. So, I think it's really interesting to look back and how, I mean, you put it in terms of how quickly it happens, and it was crazy, because when I would come down to visit you, time didn't seem to exist.
No.
Like, we could just, you know, it was never enough time, that's for sure. And time would fly by, but it was one of those things that, oh my gosh, it's, you know, 11 p.m. already? Where did, you know, we were just talking, what happened? But yeah, are you good?
No, I was just gonna say it. I've literally always been like a cynical person, in like a way of like, I have like the logical realist in me. So when people would say stuff like this, like, I just knew, I'd always be like, ugh, okay, whatever.
like gross.
Yeah, right, okay. Like, don't be an idiot, kind of a thing.
Right.
And I have no way to describe it other than that. Like,
yeah.
Like, it surpasses all logic, and
it's crazy. And I got to learn a little bit more, because I had heard of agoraphobia, but mainly in a way from like movies and television shows, in ways that it was portrayed in like either a comical way or an extreme way. And so this gave me the opportunity to learn on a completely different spectrum of anxiety and everything, because I've been dealing generalized anxiety disorder, and this gave me a whole new thing to focus on. And I think that kind of plays into my savior complex and wanting to fix all the problems. And I still to this day have, you know, things where I want to constantly fix things for you and make it better. Ultimately, it comes down to, I just want the best for you. And I know that comes at a cost of asking too much, but it's been really nice to get some perspective on things, because while we are very similar, we have different perspectives on a lot of things, and having different mental health journeys has been really interesting. You have more years in on therapy, and it's not a competition or anything like that, but it gives you more insight, and I really enjoy having that. So
yeah, I had my first panic attack the day before I started high school. So I was young, I was 14, and so I have been in therapy and out of therapy since then, and I'm 35 now, so 21 years of therapy, basically.
Your therapy can legally drink.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, exactly.
But to kind of keep everything going, we dated for, it would have been about 6 months.
No,
No, not that long.
5 months.
5 months. Yeah. So
4.5, kind of, actually.
4.5. So we reached a point about 4.5 months in where it was kind of, hey, driving an hour and a half isn't terrible, but it does kind of fucking suck.
Yeah.
Not seeing you all the time, especially with how organic this flowed together. And so I think there was this weird moment where like things were aligning because like your lease was coming up and it just didn't make sense.
No, my lease wasn't coming up.
Oh.
My rent was getting raised again, and I was like, I can't afford it anymore. Like,
that's right.
I wish I could, but I can't.
Yeah, because your apartment was great. So.
Yes, amazing. And I remember just being like, I feel like I'm gonna have to like live in my car, like not seriously, but
right.
I was just like, I literally just cannot afford this. I don't do well with roommates. I've never really had a roommate, honestly, besides like a family member.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't gonna be, and like with my agoraphobia, I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, this is my safe space. This is my home. And I'd lived there for 8 years, but it just had gotten to a point where I was like, I just can't. And I remember joking around with him and being like, I wish I could just move in with you or something like that. Like, not being serious at all, because I knew it had only been 4.5 months. And then it kind of got to a point where I was like, no, I really do need to move. Like, and I felt like it was coming to a point where at some point we would have moved in together, but I don't know if it necessarily would have been right at that moment. But I was like, you know, were you serious? Like, cause I remember when I asked him, he was like, I would in a heartbeat, like, let you move in with me. And I had never been not around my family, not around my friends. I had never lived further than 10 minutes from any of my safe people. I had never lived outside of like a 30-mile radius.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so I like jokingly said to my mom one day, like, because she was like, well, what are you going to do? Like, you can't afford this. You can't afford how you're living anymore. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Move in with Mikey? And she completely thinking that anyone in my family would have been like, absolutely not. Like, don't do that. Like, why would you want to move that far away from us? And especially my aunt, because her and I are extremely close. And she was like, you could never, like, I've had family members that have moved away and moved to different cities and states. And she'd always been like, you could never move away from me. Like, and I obviously felt the same way because she was my safe person. And so when I said it and like they both were okay with it, I was like, okay, maybe I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And he had said, like, I need to talk with the boys, like, seriously about it. I had met them, obviously. They had come down to where I lived a couple of times, I think.
Yep.
But, like, there had never been something where it was, like, an extended period of time, obviously. When you have, like, a weekend sort of schedule sometimes with that, because obviously they couldn't come down during the week.
Correct.
They had school.
Yeah.
So,
so you had met them, but in very small amounts and
correct,
small sample size.
Correct. And so he was like, let me talk with the boys and see, and I will let you know for sure, but I would love it. And I was like, am I really doing this? Like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I remember telling my therapist, like, hey, I think I'm moving an hour and a half away to be with Mikey. And she was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, yeah, like, what? Like, I couldn't, like, saying it, I was like, this just sounds so fucking weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a thing when you have all of your family and your safe people here in your safe spaces, and you are dealing with something like agoraphobia where, going anywhere that's not a comfortable spot or, somewhere that well, and you are going to just kind of uproot and move. So,
oh yes, because I had never been to where he's lived. He has always come down by me. I had never gone by him.
You might want to come up and see it.
That was like, as soon as I agreed, I was like, crap, like, what if it's one of those towns where, like, everything is in, like, one spot, and it's so busy, and I'll never be able to leave the house because the roads will be so busy, and I'll just be worried and panicked the whole time, and it'll be worse up there because I won't have anyone, and I won't be able to leave the house because they're, like, I'm from a populated area, so, like, going from a very populated area to a not very populated area. I like to say it's in the middle of nowhere. He gets mad when I say that. But I never had to get on the freeway to go to Target before.
It's 2 exits, but I understand where you're getting at.
So I went up there, and I remember being up there the first time and being like, okay, I can move here.
Yeah.
Like, I was there maybe like a half hour.
I remember distinctly you were amazed at the quietness of the area as opposed to the populated area you come from. And I was just like, yeah, I guess. I don't know, because I was not used to the noise. And
it has become my, like, white noise.
Yeah.
Hearing sirens all the time and hearing cars and hearing horns and all of that kind of stuff. I lived not far from a firehouse, so, like, I actually lived, like, kind of, like, in between 2 firehouses, so I just heard sirens all the time. And
now you come to a city, a village that doesn't even have their own police department. They have a shared police department, so it was definitely a big move for you. It was a big move for me because I didn't think I'd let somebody else move in again with me. And I talked to the boys, and they were surprisingly so good about, like, absolutely, this makes you happy, please, make it happen, and we will be there. And I am so proud of you for the ability to make that move when all you know is in one area, and yet the love you have for me made you feel comfortable to do that. And so I can't thank you enough for ever, taking that leap of faith. So we go to moving in, and I know we're running near our time here and everything, so we'll kind of jump through a few things here because, otherwise I think we could sit here for hours and just go on and on about everything. We go from never wanting marriage. That was kind of the one thing that we had in common. You talked about it, and suddenly, after she had moved in, I had been talking to my sister about it for a bit, and I'm like, I think I want to propose to this woman. And it was so crazy. It was
not after I moved in, it was before.
Well, yes, I had the discussions before. But after you moved in and I saw how you were with the boys and how life flowed, and suddenly any desire to not be married, it didn't make sense. We go back to that, if you know, you know, and it didn't matter that we'd only been dating for 6 months at that time. It didn't matter that you had just moved in a month and a half earlier. It didn't matter because I knew you gave me this feeling that I wanted to call you my wife. I wanted to be your husband. And so we get to the point where I'm going to propose to this woman. And I don't know if we want to get to that story or just kind of keep going, but
how I almost ruined my proposal.
I mean, now you can't say it like that and not go into the story. So now we have to tell the story of how you almost ruined the proposal.
So we were laying in bed one night, the night that he proposed, but I didn't know that was what it was going to be.
Right.
And I remember being like, I was laying there, like, head on his chest, and I was like, so do you, like, think we would get engaged, like, anytime soon? And I remember him being like, like, laughing a little bit and being like, like, define soon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, like, do you see us getting engaged within the next year? I said, I'm not rushing you whatsoever. Like, this is not you need to do this sooner rather than later. I'm not giving you an ultimatum. Like, if you don't propose, I'm leaving or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, yes. And then, of course, like, the wheels are spinning in my head, and I'm like, do you have any idea how you would propose? And he, like, giggled again and was like, yeah, I've thought of some ideas and thrown some things out there. And he was like, how would you want it to be? And I was like, well, just something, like, simple and elegant and, like, I don't even think I said elegant, actually. I think I just said, like, something simple and just
not in a crowd.
Yeah, I was like, if you propose at, I mean, I wouldn't go to a sporting event like that where you could propose on a Jumbotron. Right. But I was like, if you ever did, I would tell you no immediately. Yeah. I would literally probably stand up and walk away from you. Don't do a flash mob. None of that. Like, I will say no. And so, in my mind at that point, I was like, his stepmom is really good with, like, crafts and stuff like that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, when he said, like, yes, within the next year or something like that, I was like, oh my God, it would be so cool if he had proposed on Christmas, because I love Christmas. And if he would do, like, something, like, on a t-shirt and propose to me in front of his family or whatever. And so after he said, like, yeah, I have some ideas, I was like, oh, okay. And then we stopped, and I was like, okay, can you tell me about the ideas that you're not going to do? And he was like, no, I can't do that. Like, I can't tell you what I'm not going to do. And I was like, okay. I was like...
This whole time, I have been holding onto the ring for a while at that point.
Yeah, almost, I mean, over a month.
Yeah. So it was funny to me, so...
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And obviously he knew that was when he was going to do it. And I'm just sitting there asking question after question, not knowing that that's what was going to happen. And I remember being like, okay, I remember asking, I was like, I have one more question. I was like, do you think it would be within the next, did I say 6 months or something like that?
It was either that, or do you think it would be by Christmas?
Yeah. It was. It was something like that, because I was like, do you think it'll still be this year? And I remember him getting up and walking out of the bedroom, because we were in the bedroom, because I think he was going to the bathroom or something. Mm-hmm. And I remember him being like, saying my full name.
Yep.
And was like, you can't know everything. And I was like, mad. I was like,
how dare you?
Why would you not answer me? And then he came back in the room and was like, so I finally figured out the playlist for the weekend. And I was like, what the fuck do we need a playlist for?
we were going to
a Halloween
party. Yeah.
And it was like a drive. And I was like, what do we need a playlist for? And he was like, well, for the hotel thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And he handed me his phone. And it had songs in order. Mm-hmm. It's basically saying, my name, will you marry me and make me the happiest guy around? Mm-hmm. And I literally looked up at him and I was like, shut the fuck up. And I threw the phone down. And I was like, what? And then he got on the bed on one knee on the bed. Because I'm still laying there. Like, what is happening right now? And then I just start, like, crying a little bit, which is, like, crazy because I don't cry. Like, I don't cry at movies. I don't cry at shows. I don't cry at books. I don't cry at any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, it just coming out, like, uncontrollable. And then he proposed. And then I remember FaceTiming people. Mm-hmm. I remember FaceTiming my best friend, and her son in the background was like, didn't you guys just start dating? He's like 10 or 11 at that point. Yeah. Like, so just his logical self of like, didn't you guys just start dating? Like, why would you get engaged already? That's weird. And me being like, yeah, this is definitely very weird. Yeah. Like, but yeah, then we were engaged.
Absolutely.
And then we were like, we want a fall wedding, and we picked out dates. Mm-hmm. And the next day we had a wedding date.
Yeah.
And it was less than a year after that.
Yep. And we have a fun story to get to at that point of time when we get to that section of the timeline here and story. But that in a nutshell is roughly how we went from flirting on a swinger group to being engaged, basically. So I wanted to have you on here, get your side of perspective, mainly because you remember things way better than I do, but also to ask you a few things as we go. I know you know roughly where I'm going next with the story and the episode and all that stuff, so we won't spoil anything, but I guess I want to hear what you've seen as far as the growth in me, or your reactions and feelings with the podcast, or goals that we can kind of have together as a couple going forward. I really wanted to thank you because you have been such a big supporter, not only in my mental health journey, but with everything I do. When I brought up the idea of doing the podcast, even if the timing probably wasn't the greatest, you have been such a nonstop supporter, and you have pushed me to do what makes me happy and given me my me time with it. And that sort of support I'm not used to. I'm not used to someone just flat out saying, go ahead and do this. I'm much more used to, shouldn't I be doing something for you? And so thank you for giving me that confidence boost to being like, no, go tell your story. This is a good outlet for you.
Of course. Anything for you.
I appreciate that. And so going into 2025 here, are there things you see for us or for the podcast or for me in general you want to go over, growth, or just wise words from your side?
I definitely have seen a lot of growth in him. Before we were talking about impulsive versus spontaneous, he has done amazing things with the spontaneity. We have different love languages, so he has done a lot of growth with that aspect as well, in understanding other love languages and realizing that I need different things than he needs. So a lot of growth in that. I've seen a lot of growth just in like who you are as a person. You obviously are still anxious. That's not anything that's like going away or anything like that. But I have seen a lot of growth as far as your knee-jerk reactions, because before I feel like it would have just been like if I would have brought something up, or if there would have been an issue, or kind of like at a fork in the road of something, and you would have definitely just put it all on yourself and thought everything was going to end. And I've seen a lot of growth in that for you. I definitely want to see more growth for that in 2025 and beyond, obviously. I just want you to see who I see, and the person that you are. I would like you to be yourself towards you, which obviously is not easy.
Right.
We can give advice so much better than we can take it. And so I think just having those hard conversations and hard moments where like, I don't want to say talk back, but kind of like where you say something and I kind of challenge it, because I feel like that's where you've done a lot of your real growth, is when I've kind of challenged those thoughts and behaviors and kind of that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
looking forward to that. Wanting to travel more, obviously. Wanting to definitely move closer to my family and friends.
Understandably so.
But yeah, I think that's, I with the podcast, I was so excited for him at first. He was like, I think it was like 2 weeks before our wedding, and mind you, I DIY'd like everything for the wedding. So like it was like 2 weeks before the wedding, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna start out my podcast." And we got married on October 5th, and he was like, "I'm gonna have my first episode on October 10th." And he was like so excited, and I was like, "I really want this for you."
Mm-hmm.
But then like after we got married and that hit, and like all of his time was going to the podcast, I definitely should have spoken out sooner and been like, "I love this idea. Could you maybe do this after we've been married for like 2 months, maybe even? Like, just give it like a little time."
Yeah.
Because I felt like we went right from wedding to now podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no time for us then at that point.
Right.
So we've worked through a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I still obviously will always be your biggest supporter. I still want you. I throughout all of it, I remember you being like, "Do you want me to just stop the podcast? Should I stop the podcast?" And I'm like, "No, absolutely not. I don't want you to stop the podcast. I'm just letting you know how I feel, and I should have spoken up sooner. I didn't. So now we just have to figure out what steps we can take to make this something that will work."
Yeah.
For both of us, because I loved seeing his like confidence and his passion with this, that I still wanted him to be able to do it. I just wanted to have us time as well, because anyone who's been married and has planned a wedding knows that you don't really get a lot of like you time before a wedding.
Correct.
So then after the wedding, you're expecting you time, and we didn't really get that right away because it was podcast forward. But I think now we have a lot better balance, which is nice. And I think that there is only room to just grow onward and upward at this point with it.
Yeah, and I think I was so excited to do something as far as the podcast and get that message out there that I didn't stop and kind of exist in the moment. And I didn't do it to make it feel like I wasn't excited to be married or anything like that. I got just one thing that, I've battled a lot with is black and white thinking or hyper focus on something. And I think I just got so wrapped up in the potential of what the podcast could be that I forgot that one of the reasons I started in the first place was to tell people the story, which mainly included concluding closer to meeting you and the growth and the balance. We talked about different love languages and processing speeds. And even with that, I think I struggle still with the black and white thinking and trying to get off of that. So I thank you for your patience and pushing through. We've had some hard conversations about it. We've definitely gotten a better balance as far as, hey, let's carve out extra time for us to still be a couple. The podcast can exist at the same time, but don't let it become something that overtakes that me times or us time. So I highly appreciate it. I look forward to in 2025 continuing to learn more about our journeys. We're both, still battling different things and always will, but I am so excited to take on this life with you by my side. I can't say it enough. You bring such balance and perspective and happiness to me. And I hope to one day see myself the way that you see me and give myself that self-compassion. And I hope you one day see yourself in the way that I do tend to put you on a pedestal. But I see so many amazing things about you. And I think we both could use it. Obviously. I think we both could definitely use being nicer to ourselves going forward. So
what Mikey lacks in self-compassion and self-confidence, I more than make up for. So that's why it's really hard for me a lot of times when he doesn't have those like moments of being like, yeah, I'm the shit, like, or like worrying about what other people think or what other people are saying, or if the car behind us in the drive-thru is waiting longer, because I'm like, who the fuck cares? Like, obviously within reason. I'm not an asshole, depending who you ask.
Most days,
I just, and like, other people's opinions of me are not my business.
Yeah. And I strive to have that. I think we bring a good balance of where you can teach me a little bit of that. I can bring some moments of, hey, well, there are some times where it matters to look at what time you're going to be somewhere and what other people may think, not to a comparison level, but a respect thing. So I think we balance each other out on that front as well.
I don't feel like I'm ever late where it's like disrespectful.
And I struggle because I was taught from a young age to be 15 minutes early everywhere. So I think we balance out close to on time.
No, yes.
Yeah.
I remember there was like a question one time and like a meme, and it was like, would you rather be at the airport 20 minutes before your flight or 4 hours before your flight? And he was like 4 hours before. And I was like, okay, I'll meet you there because I'm not sitting in an airport for 4 hours. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah. I could seriously sit and talk to you for hours and it would feel like minutes, just like it did in the beginning when we fly. And I really hope this isn't the last conversation we have for the podcast.
No.
I am very thankful.
I have a lot more shit to talk about. You.
I know. You were super nice this time, which is weird. No. But
Won't happen again.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for recording, which will now be the longest episode I've recorded up to this point. But like I said, no, don't be sorry. It feels like minutes with you, and I love that.
So it literally has been minutes.
Yeah.
So yes.
Thank you.
We haven't hit the hour yet.
Getting pretty close. But anything else you want to say before we wrap up the podcast for the night?
I don't think so. I would like to take my jeans off and get into pajama pants.
Absolutely. We're traveling, so we're not at home. As you've noticed, the microphone is not here in front of me as it normally is, but we are rolling with the punches and doing it live from a hotel room. So we're looking to go to bed because it's late. I'm tired and all that. So,
but I wanted to make sure he got his podcast out.
Because she is a supportive wife, ladies and gentlemen.
I am.
Well, again, thank you, love, for coming on here and sharing part of our story with me. I appreciate it. For all of you listening on the pod here, before I go on for another 4 hours about how my wife is incredible, this is Mikey going back on mute. Until next time.